little bit a few minutes ago, anarcho-communism, anarcho-syndicalism, those other anarchist ideologies. And we're seeing, with the internet and the growth of more niche ideologies, not only the growth of anarcho-capitalism, but the growth of anarcho-communism. And with the events of Chaz, I believe, Chaz or Chad, the part of the neighborhood that briefly declared independence from the United States, and that went downhill
Right.
really fast.
Right.
Do you think that events like that and kind of leftist anarchists in general are kind of giving anarchism in general a bad name?
No, I think that what they're rebelling against is state excesses, and that's giving the state a bad name. There is some alignment between ourselves and these other types of anarchists. So, for example, we support decentralization as a way to move towards. So, the ultimate world of liberty would be 8 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion people. So 8 billion governments, basically. Everyone's their own government. Everyone's their own sovereign jurisdiction. So moving from a world of 200 states to a world of 5,000 states would be good. It'd be moving in that direction. So if a little enclave wants to secede and have its own little rules, that's in some ways a movement in the right direction, although the rules that they adopt on that territory might be unlibertarian. However, in a libertarian world, we think that that's fine as long as everyone is free to leave and you respect property rights there. So if you want to have a communist experiment on your own property, you're free to do that. So the difference is that our views are one way and universal, and theirs are not. So we, in our world of anarcho-capitalism or anarcho-libertarianism, you could have experiments. You could have little socialist enclaves as in their own borders, as long as they let people leave if they don't like it, right? But they wouldn't permit the opposite. They would not permit there to be capitalist enclaves, partly because they would be so successful, they would soon swamp and outgrow the others, and they would dominate everything. And I think they would ultimately sense that they would want to ban and outlaw it. Robert Nozick, who's a famous libertarian philosopher, he had something in his book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia, where he said, basically, we libertarians are in favor of capitalist acts between consenting adults. And the anarcho-communists and the syndicalists and the socialists ultimately don't believe in that. So ultimately, if people want to have a private contractual relationship, like let's say I want to hire workers to work at my factory, they regard the employer-employee relationship as inherently exploitative and some kind of vague violation of the rights of the employee, because it's stealing the excess or the surplus labor product, the surplus labor value of his work, because the employer is making a profit. That profit has to come from theft of the labor he put into the products he's selling. So you're exploiting him, which is false economics, based, by the way, on Adam Smith. So Adam Smith was the cause of all this. That's why I'm an Austrian economist. The Austrians reject all the flaws in the labor theory of value of Adam Smith, which led to Karl Marx's labor theory of value and communism. In any case, in a free world, if an employer and an employee want to work together, that's just a private contractual relationship. It's voluntary, and so either the socialist permits that or they don't permit it. If they permit it, they're permitting capitalism to form, and if they don't permit it, then they're outlawing a private consensual relationship, as Nozick called it, capitalist acts between consenting adults. So ultimately, we anarchist libertarians would say that the other anarchists are not actually genuine anarchists, because all they say is they're against the state, but they don't really give coherent reasons why. They kind of are against the state because they see it as in bed with capitalism, and that's what they're really against. But to enforce their vision of anarchy, they would basically use institutionalized force to outlaw private relations between employers and employees. But that requires a state. You can't outlaw something without use of force. And if you want to really outlaw it, has to be systematic or institutional force, which is what the state is. So we don't really think they're genuine anarchists. And now they say the same thing about us. They think that we anarcho-capitalists are just apologists who use these levers of power for their advantage. So the problem is the state, the problem is not capitalism. We would agree with the left anarchists that today's society is not really truly free market or capitalist. We have crony capitalism, but they identify crony capitalism with capitalism. We say that it's a perversion of capitalism, but the ultimate solution is just to get rid of the state and let's see who's right. As long as they don't use force to outlaw private relationships between employers and employees and things like that.
And just in the research of getting ready for this episode, I noticed on your Twitter, your bio says you're a Austro-crypto-techno-anarcho-capitalist libertarian theorist. Is this like a joke kind of thing? Because I know that on the internet, a lot of people will make jokes and say like, "Oh, I'm a big long thing," or if it's serious.
It's not really a joke. I mean, we change these things all the time. Twitter limits how many characters you can have in that little bio, so that's all I could fit in there. So I put in the hyphens. But yeah, I mean, I'm into Bitcoin and crypto. I'm an electrical engineer, patent attorney, so I'm into technology. So that's the techno part. So I'm not like anti-technology like a lot of the old fogies my age are. I'm not anti-Bitcoin like a lot of the old school Austrians are who are stuck to gold. And I'm Austrian economics influenced. I'm an anarchist libertarian. I'm a libertarian, and I'm an attorney, and I'm a writer, and I'm a theorist. So all those things are kind of what I'm about. So it's not really a joke. It's just an unwieldy short summary.
Right. Yeah. And so you mentioned being an attorney. You're a huge fan of eliminating copyright law. This is not something I think that's super popular, but it's definitely getting traction in communities of musicians and that sort of thing. Why do you think copyright law should be eliminated? Can you go a little bit?
Yeah, it came from, so I actually am a patent and intellectual property attorney. I've been one for about the same time that I've come to the conclusion that they should be abolished, and that was kind of independent. It was just from a deeper study of property theory and legal theory and Austrian theory and libertarian theory. I wrestled with the idea when I was in law school because I read some of the early libertarian writers like Ayn Rand and even Lysander Spooner, who's a famous early anarchist libertarian writer. And they were pro-intellectual property. And it's called intellectual property, and that means patent and copyright and other things like trademark and trade secret. These things are a little bit different, these legal systems, but they're called intellectual property because they're not the same as regular property rights, which usually are property rights in physical resources like a car or land or your body or food or crops, things like or wood, steel, objects. But because these things cover things that are not physical, and everyone is uncertain about these things, like why is this property? Is it just so the people that defend these legal systems started calling them, they said, well, they're types of property rights, but they're different. They're intellectual, which means that they protect things that are intangible, but that flow from the creative aspect of the mind. Like copyright protects creative works like novels and paintings and software and movies and music. And patents protect creative inventions like gizmos and techniques that do practical things. And trademarks protect fanciful marks used to identify the source of goods, and trade secrets protect knowledge that you keep secret that gives you an advantage. So these laws all protect these things, so they're called intellectual property. But because it's called intellectual property, if you're in favor of capitalism and the free market and the West and the Constitution and America and property rights, then you naturally think, well, this is just part of it. This is a weird part of it, but it's part of it, so I must be in favor of that. Especially because some of the early writers, like it's in the Constitution. The Constitution protects it. Thomas Jefferson, was the first patent commissioner. Ayn Rand was in favor of it. Lysander Spooner was in favor of it. So you kind of assume that these things are part of capitalism, although a strange part. Like one odd thing about it is that a property right in your car or your home or your watch can last forever, theoretically, until the thing wears out or is destroyed. Like there's no time limit on these things. Whereas patents expire in about 17 years and copyrights used to expire in 14 or 28 years, and now they expire about 100 plus years, but they still expire after a finite term. And that's odd, right? You're like, well, why would it expire? And so I questioned the arguments given for it because they weren't very good. Like there's something weird about the arguments for it, but I assumed they were right. So I kept toying with this idea in law school, and then as I started writing more on libertarian theory and understanding more, and especially when I started practicing it, I really turned my attention more to it. I said, I need to figure this out. Maybe I'll be the one who can figure out a good argument for IP law, because no one else can. Like, I'm a libertarian and I understand Austrian theory, and I actually know IP law because I'm practicing it. Like, most people writing on it don't really understand it. Like, Ayn Rand didn't understand it. Lysander Spooner didn't understand it. It was primitive anyway at the time when he wrote. Ayn Rand thought that the patent system in the US was a first to file system, and she was wrong. She thought it was a first to invent system. It was a first to file system. So she didn't even understand the law. I understood the law, so I thought I could figure it out, but I kept failing, and I usually don't fail. Because when I set my mind on something, I could do it. I finally realized I kept failing because I was trying to do the impossible. I was trying to justify something that is unjustifiable. And when I finally flipped that over in my mind, I said, let me try the other way around. Maybe the reason I'm failing is because this whole thing is just a mistake. And then everything made sense and it fell into place. So the ultimate reason is because if you understand the purpose and nature of property rights, and you don't really have to be a libertarian to think of it this way. This is just the common sense, practical, pragmatic view that Western legal systems have always worked. The common law and the Roman law in Rome and the civil law in Europe, and even other legal systems, canon law, merchant law, lex mercatoria, and even Islamic law. All legal systems have a certain core, which is like things like, you shouldn't murder, you shouldn't steal, which is basically property rights in your body and property rights in other things. And these property rights are always assigned with a few simple rules, like the first person who gets it, who plucks it out of the wilderness when it's unowned, has a better claim than someone else. Because if you didn't have a better claim than someone else, then you would never have the right to use it in the first place, and we would all die. So, as a practical matter, the property rights system to work has to let someone use something that's not being used so it can start being used. And he has to have a better claim than later comers, because that's what property rights are. It means the guy that has it now has a better claim than someone else coming later. Because if the later comer had a better right to it, then no property rights would be secure. Like, whatever you had, someone else could just take it, and then they're the owner, which means you don't have ownership. So just a very simple idea that you can use something that doesn't have an owner, and you have a better claim than someone who comes later. That's basically the essence of property right.
Did you enjoy these clips? Want to hear the rest of the episode? Click the links below to listen to the full episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other popular streaming apps. Remember to support us. You can do this by checking out our Instagram pages at YIP Institute and at Watch Verbum. You can also look at our website at www.yipinstitute.com. Make sure to follow our page as we upload weekly. Have a good day.